All right, good evening, everyone. It is Monday, October 27, about 8 p.m. We welcome all of you for this next session of Roadmap for a Moral Society. We are starting session 147, and it's actually a similar theme to something else we see elsewhere. Man made in the image of God. What an interesting topic. Man made in the image of God. We're going to be discussing that today. So, without much further ado, a quick introduction. We're going to following our introduction, we'll be starting with our opening prayer. So, just a quick introduction for those of you who are just joining the roadmap series that we have on Mondays. You're able to go to clearwaterbahais.org every Monday, and under the activities and events tab, click on the Zoom link to join. So if you're watching from YouTube or from Facebook, it is accessible to you to join online. Also, to take part in our discussion, we welcome all of you who are joining to take part in discussion, to ask questions, to perhaps share some thoughts and insights, maybe to help us find some answers. We just remind everyone that all of our opinions that we share are entirely our own, as we are trying to understand the Baha'i writings together. With that said, to start this session with a spiritual mindset, with our thoughts focused on a common purpose, discovering this roadmap for a moral society together, we start with an opening prayer. And we have, I know, a volunteer. Do we have our volunteer ready to say the prayer?
Yes, I'm ready.
Lovely. Please begin.
O God, my God, I have set out from my home, holding fast unto the cord of thy love, and I have committed myself wholly to thy care and thy protection. I entreat thee by thy power, through which thou did protect thy loved ones from the wayward and the perverse, and from every contumacious oppressor, and every wicked doer who had strayed far from thee, to keep me safe by thy bounty and thy grace. Enable me then to return to my home by thy power and thy might. Thou art truly the Almighty, the help in peril, the self-subsisting. Allah.
Once more, welcome everyone. We're going to begin this session 147, Man Made in the Image of God. Jeremiah, if you can change the slide. So we ask that one of us volunteer to read this slide.
I'll go ahead and read if it's okay.
Yes, Cherry, thank you.
Man made in the image of God. When we examine the world and the souls of men, the perceptuous signs of the perfections of the divinity appear clear and manifest. For the realities of all things attest to the existence of a universal reality. The reality of the divinity is even as the sun, which from the heights of its sanctity shines upon every land, in whose radiance every land and every soul receives a share. Were it not for this light and this radiance, nothing could exist. Now all created things tell of this light, partake of its rays, and receives their portion thereof. But the full splendor of the perfections, bounties, and attributes of the divinity shines forth from the reality of the perfect man, that is, that unique individual who is the universal manifestation of God. For the other beings have each received only a portion of that light, but the universal manifestation of God is the mirror held before the sun, and the latter manifestation is itself therein with all its perfections, attributes, signs, and effects.
So, question about reflections from this passage. This idea of a mirror reflecting attributes. What can we understand from this process reflecting the light of the sun?
Well, the thing is, the way that I read this, when this is from some answered questions, I presume, right? That when we examine, I
Yes,
mean,
it's from some answer questions. Yes.
okay, when we look at this, it's just like, well, we can't know God directly, but the thing is, each 1,000 years or so, there's this individual that has all the attributes innate in God. I mean, love, unity, and all that kind of stuff. And, this individual has all I guess what some people will call unlimited cosmic power to change things. But the thing is that this person is here to educate humanity to become, less barbaric and more civilized. And I mean, human beings have this dual reality. I mean, we're part animal and part divine, and it's just we have this tendency to be fearful of anything that we don't understand. And I mean, looking at the history of what the manifestations of God had to put up with, they do not receive this individual with open arms and smiles and all that kind of stuff. So it's just something that these manifestations of God had to deal with throughout history. That's and they say that man is made in the image of God. It's just like you look at civilization, you look at all the culture, like if you look at the Renaissance of Europe, or if you look at the works of art, you look at the scientific discoveries, it's just like all knowledge comes from God, and it's just we as human beings, we can only understand only a portion of that. That's basically my observation. Of course, other people have probably other opinions. I'd be welcome to listen to them too.
Can I jump in
Sabine,
there? Yeah,
yes,
thank you.
please.
Well, the sun, right? Without the sun, this earth wouldn't even be able to exist. And all we can do, we can't touch the sun, right? But we certainly feel the heat of the sun. The plants need the sun, so everything we need on Earth to exist is really from the sun. So just because we can see it or touch it, but we certainly feel the everlasting impact of the sun. And so that's why the essence of the sun we're not able to touch, but we see the radiation and the heat of the sun. And to me, that's a good example.
Sharon, if you have something to add, please.
Yes, I just have a different kind of take on this. I look at this quotation in another way, which is about energy and information. So what I think, without energy and information, creation doesn't really exist. So there has to be a vehicle for that to happen. So the process of that is that the manifestation of that is through a outward form of a human body who comes into creation, but is in essence the conveyor of this energy and information. And it's likened to the sun, because without that energy and information, nothing can grow and flourish. In fact, there would be nothing. It's just another way of seeing this. Thank you.
These are very beautiful thoughts, all of them. So there's this light and radiance. Without it, nothing could exist. So says the quote here. And when it says the words, now all created things tell of this light, partake of its rays, and receive their portion thereof, but the full splendor of the protections, bounties, and attributes of divinity shines forth from the reality of the perfect man. That is, that unique individual who is the universal manifestation of God. What is that calling upon when we speak to this? Can we find examples?
I guess the examples would be like Christ, Muhammad, the manifestations of God. I mean, we have their scripture that they've been revealed. I mean, you look at the different parts of the globe where civilizations flourished. Like if you look at the Islamic civilization that existed as a result of what Muhammad revealed to us. I mean, the the area of Persia and Saudi Arabia and that area, they flourished at the same time when Europe was in the Dark Ages. And I mean, you look at the contrast. If you look at some of the stories from in central India, you look at how Buddhism and Hinduism influenced the Indian subcontinent. And you go to China, you look at the manifestation of Confucius and the other manifestations, you had Taoism and such. And you look at the great Chinese civilization, how they flourished in their arts and their sciences flourished, as a result of these manifestations of God, you know, spreading light. I mean, you go to a room without light. I mean, you go into a room that's utter darkness until you light a candle. When you light the candle, you can see stuff. You won't bump into tables and chairs and this light. Our physical reality, our eyeballs receive this light. The photons, bounce off these fixtures because of the light. And if the light wasn't there, we wouldn't be able to see. It's like, literal darkness. And human beings, they act like a bunch of barbarians when God is not involved. I mean, we sink to our animal nature. In some instances, we go below that of the animal when, human arrogance and the human ego turns away from God. I mean, that's the darkness. I mean, that's the dark reality. When man turns away from God, you become dark and you become demonic, so to speak. That's just an observation.
All right. Well, on the other side of demonic, the idea of manifestation of God, uh, the last sentence of this quote gives us a difference between a universal manifestation of God and man, or any regular human being you can think of, or even any gifted human being can think of. It says, "For the other beings have each received only a portion of that light." And again, other beings includes all of creation too, right? "For the other beings have each received only a portion of that light. But the universal manifestation of God is the mirror held before the sun, and the latter manifests itself therein with all its perfections, attributes, signs, and effects." So the latter of the two, you have other beings, and then you have the manifestation of God. The manifestation of God, the latter, manifests the sun inside this mirror that they are, metaphorically speaking, with all the sun's perfections, attributes, signs, and effects. So where we see above that Abdul-Baha says the reality of the divinity is even as the sun, and that these universal manifestations of God are this perfect mirror that manifests the sun itself within it, with all the sun's perfections, attributes, signs, and effects. What does it mean to reflect all of this? And are we even able to put anything to words to describe it beyond what Abdul Baha said here? Well, how can we, how are we connecting with those words that were just read out?
You know, funny you should bring this topic up because science has proven that man has walked upright for 300,000 years, right? And yet we say, oh, Baha'u'llah, the universal manifestation, his reign will be 500,000 years, right? So we have scientific evidence going back to manifestations who all had partial revelation for close to the time that Baha'u'llah's 500,000 years will be looking into the future. So really, ultimately, to me, there always has been a series of partial revelation, and yet we say that the Bab closed off the prophetic cycle. That means we're done. That's it. And now Baha'u'llah came because he is now the universal manifestation. And that's when you look at the two witnesses in the book of Revelation, right? So why do we need two? And I don't want to go into it any further, but we just talked about that very topic. And wow, it sounds so far into the future, 500,000 years. But looking back in those past manifestations, it all makes sense.
Thank you for those thoughts. Do we have other ideas? Anyone else's thoughts to share?
Just a reflection, actually. Because it's very hard to describe the indescribable, isn't it? So I was just thinking about this bit where, now all created things tell of this light. And this radiance, nothing could exist. So my reflection is around how do all things tell of this light in terms of how is that manifest and who bears witness to the manifestation of all things showing forth that light. It's a reflection of the fact that rather than the writings or these creative words being flattened or linear, I think they have within them, they contain within them a multitude and layers of understanding, of meanings. So my reflection today is to not be as linear as I usually am and as literal as I usually am, and to think of infinite ways that each human being, because we're talking about man made in the image of God, so therefore each man, or each part of mankind, each human being obviously is made in the image of God, and within them they tell of this light, so they're telling the story of this divinity. And so how do we know them, and how do they choose to tell that, is my reflection for today. Thank you. Just reflecting.
Thank you for those very, very valid, very usable points. So another thing to wonder about, these attributes, these qualities, these uh, these words that we can put that light, as described here, to some tangible meaning that was provided to us. So Baha'is have the Badi calendar. It's a very beautiful calendar because unlike calendars in the past, uh, it relates to the qualities, the attributes of God. So that means every month of these 19 months making up 361 days of the solar calendar, the Badi calendar, you have these attributes of God. And the Bab, which is the prophet herald of the Baha'i faith, which is the creator of the calendar and both extolled by Baha'u'llah by many, many names, one of which the primal point and or the gate, the portal to this new age. He has put together this calendar based on these names, these attributes of God. So when we go forth and think, what is it that the manifestation of God is reflecting? These very powerful words, which are put into some meaning for us to think on, to meditate on, it's available to us. So I'm going to say power, might, names, words, speech. These are all attributes of God, which make up one of these 19-day months in the year that Baha'is observe and even hold a 19-day feast to contemplate even. Every 19 days, Baha'is have a feast, and this feast is mainly a spiritual feast in the nature of community administration. It also serves as a very important focal point for Baha'is to meet each other and see each other. It is always starting, however, with the premise that there is a spiritual meaning behind it. And this spiritual meaning that the Bab put forth for us in the writings that are available to all of us today, this concept of the Baha'i months, the Badi months, the Badi calendar, it's available to us. And not only that, Baha'u'llah throughout the writings of Baha'u'llah extols the many names of God and the ways in which the manifestations of God were these mirrors that reflected those attributes of God in the realm of creation. The Book of Certitude, the most important theological work for Baha'is, which pretty much describes the nature of religion. What is religion? What is this progressive revelation Baha'is speak of that you keep hearing all the time? Progressive this, progressive that. Well, Baha'u'llah describes that in the Kitab-i-Iqan. Also in English, the Book of Certitude. So going full circle, the reason for mentioning this concept of the manifestation of God manifesting itself, the sun therein with all its perfections, attributes, signs, and effects, the sun being this God that we're talking about. What is this God? We have some idea, these attributes. But then here's another question. Among these attributes, which I just merely refer to the 19 in the calendar, of course, I mentioned there are many more in the writings of Baha'u'llah, of course, Abdul Baha. What of this, when we talk about all of these attributes being reflected in the manifestation of God, uh, what of this is reflected in creation that we can see upon observation?
Well, if you talk about, well, the thing is, you talk about the calendar, you're talking about a 19-day cycle. And the year is made up of 19 cycles of these 19 days. And you
Yes,
have,
yes, but specifically not the I don't mean astronomy and I don't mean the Earth circling around the sun. I meant the namesake of each month,
well,
specifically the namesake. And I'm speaking to these attributes of God as relevant to the quote, how they reflect in every created thing that we see in existence. These attributes of God, how they reflect in every created thing.
hmm, good question.
Basically, we just practice those qualities and try to live up to the definition of love and glory, right? So that's our daily agenda to live up for 19 days to the quality.
Yes, that's very beautiful. And actually, there's quite a bit on that. That as we pray, or even when we consult, we call to mind these qualities. And even if it's one quality, it's, as they say, better than none. But seriously, in a very serious tone, being able to reflect on one of these qualities and try to emulate those qualities in our life, these virtues, these important attributes of God, these necessary elements of a spiritual existence, being able to master one of them, which is one very tall order nonetheless, being able to try to master one of them in of itself, the journey and the transformation, the yield is very, very, very large. Now, I would ask someone, if not challenge them, anyone here, please, to help me find this quote. But I remember reading about this reflection of what Baha'u'llah said, that if the Baha'is, every single one of us individually can do this. If we were to do our utmost just to reflect, just to master one of these virtues, that again, just being an honest person, being one virtue, being truthful in all our things, having integrity, being truthful in all our deeds, just focusing on one thing, that the light that's emanated, the spiritual light that's emanated from this act, from this effort, from this life that one would lead, it would attract so many souls to the message of Baha'u'llah, that it would lead the world, it would transform the world.
Okay. John, can I just be a little bit okay, so in order to manifest these qualities, you're talking about a recipe for manifesting, say, for example, trustworthiness. What are the steps toward that? And what does that and what is the process of that? And what does that actually look like in practice? Because you're talking in cross cultures. What one culture thinks is truthful and so on may not fit within the requirements of the standards of this faith. So, why I'm doing this is because I'm thinking about the prerequisite for any of this. And so there is a prerequisite for any of this, but it really solely depends. This is in the writings. It depends on burnishing the hearts, purifying the hearts to manifest these attributes. So there's a precursor to being able to show this. And I might just suggest, being facetious as I always am, that I have tried to sit back and say, now, what is kindness? What is trustworthiness? How does that look? And quite frankly, because it is of an essence, because it is both an outward and an inward thing, trying to measure that, so the only way that I've been able to manage that in my own personal life is that when somebody outwardly shows a kindness, and it's a sincere kindness, it profoundly changes my life, you know? So I don't think these are a kind of like, I think they're very deep, meaningful things. And I think that they're very dependent on the grace of God, because you cannot show forth any of these attributes without purity of heart and without constantly burnishing the mirror of the receptacle of the light of this revelation, which is your innermost being. Just to add to that, not to complicate, but just to add. Thank you.
You bring up a very good point. And Abdul Baha in Baha'i World Faith on page 362, a very short sentence. In line with what you're saying, Sharon, he says, I beg of God that thou wilt day by day increase the purity of thy heart, the cheerfulness of thy soul, the light of thy insight, and the search for truth. Of course, there's so much to be said about purity. And the Bab, speaking of which, again, focused a lot in the writings that he provided us to read, the the focus on purity of heart when we are praying, purity of heart when we do things. And it's such a focus as well, since I mentioned truthfulness. The reason why I mentioned that is because as Baha'is, Baha'u'llah tells us and we believe that truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtues. So, as Sharon very correctly pointed out, that our implementation of our actions in our life, just saying that I want to be truthful and then being extremely cruel to everybody around us and causing everyone to be saddened, their hearts to be saddened, even if it's the truth, it becomes a problem too. So clearly there's balance and temperance and so many other considerations to be had. So many people not realizing, okay, I want to focus on this, but I have to also consider other things. It's important to consider everything as much as we can, but also Abdul Baha would say, "Kam kam ruz beruz," which means little by little, day by day. So the essence of why this was shared today was simply to create some juxtaposition between that of a human being, a normal human being, however gifted they may be, however blessed with knowledge they may be, a human being that is not a manifestation of God, does not possess all these perfections. And just talking about focusing on one perfection being a task in of itself, the manifestation of God being the epitome of all of these perfections, attributes, signs of God, and effects of God. These manifestations of God are on a whole other level because they possess what we can't even possess in a lifetime. So, I mean, there's a lot more reflection to be had on this, but absent some thoughts, I think we can move on to the next slide and
Oh,
the review.
oh, okay. Sorry.
So, manifestation has the knowledge of God. So, to build on what we just spoke about on the last slide, if we can have a reader. So, we didn't gather volunteers before the session today, so I'm openly
Okay.
asking.
I'll go ahead and read.
All right. Thank you, Terry.
Sure. The knowledge of the reality of the divinity is in no wise possible, but the knowledge of the manifestation of God is the knowledge of God. For the bounties, splendors, and attributes of God are manifest in them. Thus, whoso attains to the knowledge of the manifestation of God attains to the knowledge of God, and whoso remains heedless of them remains bereft of that knowledge. It is therefore clearly established that the holy manifestations are the focal centers of the heavenly bounties, signs, and perfections. Blessed are those who receive the light of divine bounties from those luminous day springs.
So, reflections on the passage? Any reflections? Something stand out?
Well, the thing is, it's just like, okay, we look at towards the manifestation of God to learn about the attributes. I mean, this is something that isn't innate that we know. It's just like we have to learn. And I guess, I mean, when we come into this world, I mean, our minds are totally blank and, we get all the information from our surroundings. And assuming that our parents are obedient to God, then we have to learn about the manifestations of God from them. But if the parents are disobedient, then unfortunately the child is going to be misinformed. So that's one of those double-edged sword situations. So it's basically incumbent upon, when you learn about the manifestation of God, you not only teach your children, but you teach anybody who you come in contact with, so the teachings get spread about. And I mean, to know the manifestation of God, of course, I don't know him personally because I mean, he left this world 100 years before I even was born. So it's just one of those things. It's just like I had to learn about Baha'u'llah from other people, and I had to read and I had to it was my responsibility to learn about it. And that's basically what my responsibility is as a human being, is I have to learn about it. And if I choose not to learn about the manifestation of God, then I'm the one that's going to be responsible for not learning about it. That's basically my take on it.
Can I just add to that? Of course, these two criterias which Terry has mentioned. How do we know God? Through the manifestation of God. And these two criteria. One is that the person of the manifestation of God, and the second thing is his revelation, the word of God, the logos. So it's two things. But my point, like just reflecting and being a human being, how is it that some of us get this privilege of getting, of acknowledging or coming into contact with this current revelation and, recognizing the manifestation of God for this day. Of course, as Terry has reasonably put it, we didn't meet the manifest. Well, my generation didn't. But if you look back into history, into the Dawnbreakers and to the early believers who were around in the time of the Blessed Beauty, it's very obvious, in terms of evidence, that coming into the presence of the manifestation of God did two things. And the majority of people who came into contact with the manifestation of God were transformed beyond recognition. And there were others who weren't, who turned away, who abnegated. So I would say that the touchstone of that process, so to speak, is either the personage of the manifestation of God or the creative word of God, the revelation, because it's a living. The actual writings of Baha'u'llah are a living, breathing entity, and they're infused with an energy. And Baha'u'llah tells us that that is the energizing factor of our being. So sorry for the dialogue, but when you talk about how do we get to know, how is it that some of us, we're told in the writings that we must have had to perform, and which none of us probably can recall, one righteous deed to have the bounty and the possibility of saying I do, so to speak, to this current revelation. So there's a lot more to it, but thank you for your time and your ears. It's just me reflecting in regards to this quotation. Thank you.
A lot of thoughts. So I'm going to ask a question. The concept, whoso attains to the knowledge of the manifestations of God attains to the knowledge of God. And whoso remains heedless of them remains bereft of that knowledge. So a lot of people find that God may be found in all of creation everywhere. You can find God everywhere. The force, some people may say. Some people may call it this God is everywhere. That might be the quote. Or they may say this, that I find God in all things. I mean, there's many ways to put that out there. Some others may say that there's no such a thing as God, that it's a product of the mind of intelligent people or not so intelligent people. Doesn't that is just speculation. But the question I have here is this quote about attaining the knowledge of the manifestation of God. So from this writing and from other writings from Baha'u'llah, I've learned that the only way I'm going to know God is through the manifestation of God, claiming that God exists and what God is. So if I say that I've known Jesus, or I've known the Buddha, or I've known Muhammad or Baha'u'llah or Moses. The names go on. If I've known a manifestation of God, be it not per se in person, as we all have acknowledged, it's more than a lifetime away. But if I have known God through the book, that being the Bible to many, the Quran to many, the Bhagavad Gita to many, Upanishads to many, the Kitab Aqdas, and the volumes of writings that Baha'u'llah has left us, the Qayyim al-Asma of the Bab, and so on. All of these books attest to contain the knowledge of God. So, what I'm understanding from this quote, that if I'm heedless of them, capital them, the manifestations of God, I remain bereft of that knowledge of God. So I'm understanding that I cannot find the knowledge of God outside of attaining to the knowledge of the manifestation of God. So I have questions as to reflections on that. We've met many people around the world, and I see what looks to be maybe an AI image of a personage like Jesus, and there's a similar statue of him in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. A very beautiful statue, actually. My question is, many of my Christian friends will say, if I didn't know this already, that Jesus Christ is the way to God. He is the way. And my Hindu friends may agree when I say that every manifestation of God is the way to God. Now, the question comes down to this concept of only attaining the knowledge of God through the manifestation of God. How else can we describe this to our friends? And furthermore, to how does this connect to the larger concept that we're reading here?
I guess that has to do with the influence of the manifestation of God in this world. I mean, you look at the revelation of the Bob, and it happened on the same night that Samuel Morse sent that coded message between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. over wire. And that led us to the, telecommunications and the possibility of us having this conversation here in 2025. Prior to 1844, I mean, that technology didn't even exist. I mean, for us to communicate over any type of distance, I'd have to, write down a message, put it in an envelope, give it to a runner, and the runner would either ride on a horse or, do something to get the message between point A and point B. And, we have the influence of the prophet. And then when Baha'u'llah declared his mission in Baghdad, I mean, the United States was in a civil war. And as a result of the Civil War, slaves were freed. And it's just, one of the laws that Baha'u'llah wrote down in his book, saying that slavery is illegal and you can no longer do this. And it's just, if you go to the teachings of Christ, everybody asks us just like, why didn't Jesus free the slaves? And Jesus said that, well, there are many things I say to you, but you can't bear them now. So that's just one of those things that Jesus said that, well, you're not ready for it yet. So I guess in the Baha'i faith, we talk about timeliness. I think something that Baha'u'llah wrote, or I don't know if it was Baha'u'llah quoting the Bab or Abdul Baha quoting Baha'u'llah. It's just like, just because you know something doesn't necessarily mean it's timely. And just because something is timely, it's just like, are you ready to hear it? So it's just one of those things. It's just when when the human beings are ready to receive this advanced knowledge, then the manifestation of God will be made manifest. And it's just, that's why we had, I guess, two manifestations of God appear, one right after another, in a period of 19 years. And that hasn't been, I mean, according to Baha'i theology, it's never happened before in the history of the world. I might be wrong, but that's from what I read.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think Sharon has thoughts to share.
Yes, John, I was just going to go back on what you were saying about all your friends across the world, your Buddhist, Zoroastrian, Christian, and so on friends across the world, in regards to and people who are atheists as well. Like when you asked a question about how would you explain am I right, progressive revelation to your friends, in order to at least present to them an upgrade and a current relative situation.
So my
Sorry.
question, actually, if I may rephrase, so it's easier understood.
Thank you.
As it relates to the quote here, my question primarily deals with the idea of knowing God. Again, there are some friends that we all know do not believe that a God exists. Among the friends who believe or not, we have individuals we come into contact with in our life that they have many different paths in their lives. Some people think that God's all around them, who even believe in Jesus or whatever their prophet is, and that some don't have one, but they still believe in some force. And what I was getting at is the quote here, where the knowledge of God isn't possible unless we know these manifestations of God, who are the dayspring, the fountains, the source of that knowledge. And I was asking how we explain that to someone, because as you know, and I think Terry kind of put out this whole timeliness and how much to say, to whom to say it, that kind of stuff. My question is ultimately, with a little more empathy, perhaps, how we can describe that to our friends. So again, you may have met some Christian friends that they'll tell you that only their prophet is the person that you can go to heaven with, and there's no one else, and that you're going to hell if you don't believe that. So again, the atmosphere where I come from, at least, there's very much there's only one way, and this is it, and no other interpretation is right. Whereas we're pretty much trying to have more of a unifying feel, saying that again, there is a God, and you need the manifestation of God to attain the knowledge of God, without which it's not possible. And yet, again, with empathy, how do we describe that?
Yeah, good question. Because you're right. In our Christian environment, Christ would say, I'm the only way. And that's the conversation of the only way, right? And Buddha said it, Baha'u'llah says it, Zoroaster, they all said that. And I use in How to Write a slide where the only way, where every manifestation in their writings explains it, because it simply means during their era, during their time of influence, they are the only way. Don't pay attention to anti-Christ or anti-whatever or false prophets, because they are the only truth. And so then when we later on explain, the many mansions, and I don't want to go into a biblical explanation here, but the truth is that every manifestation says that to clarify that they are the word during their time.
Okay, and I think that connects with what Sharon, I think you're connecting with the progressive revelation piece. Is that correct? Is that how they connect?
Yes, well, I was going to connect with that, but I just want to have this one moment to say that I could say a lot of things, and I have quoted from the writings in regards to progressive revelation. It's a word that people get very concerned about. We're given allegories and so on about the child in the womb, how it has a certain environment for it to grow and is a loved child in that environment. And when that environment, when it's free from the womb, then other laws, natural laws apply. And with this release of the knowledge of our reality and why creation is what it is, there is a progressive because human beings develop at different rates. And if they're not ready and cannot absorb reality, and there's a big debate at the moment about what reality really is because of what's going on. So my point around this, John, is saying that, the point is that if people are ready and they have an open mind, then there is some possibility. They are not preconditioned. They haven't been indoctrinated. The reason that I said in the very beginning, why are many are called but few are chosen? Why is it in this day that I can see this reality and my neighbors whom I love and my friends whom I love cannot see this reality? There has to be a reason for that. And I would just say that we're all at different degrees of understanding. We're all at different degrees of social and religious conditioning. And I think there is a point in time, and also we've been given the act of free will. We have a right to choose. We have a right to get energized and sort truth out for ourselves. Now, like, I am a Christian. Oh, that person's a Buddhist. Well, I will be open-minded and I will go and have a look at the things that connect me with that Buddhist. We're living in a world where people have become so disconnected. They don't invite exploration of others and other things. So my diatribe is really about the frustration. I do know the answers to this, but I don't know who your audience is, and I don't want to kill people. That is the point, because truth sometimes can be real truth can be very damaging to people. So all I would say is that for each classroom in school, we're given a teacher. And if we're doing mathematics in Form 1, that's the mathematics we get. Then once we graduate from that class, we go to Form 2 with a mathematics teacher or a science teacher who's got the curriculum for that level of our understanding. And likewise, the prophets of God, they're all one in spirit, but they come to humanity at a critical time of either self-destruction or progress. And they, out of their beneficence, they give us a road map, so to speak, of survival. You know, through their written word at this stage. In the future, it might not be a written word, and through their selves. And those two criteria guide humanity. And they haven't had a very good track record, because every time they appear, they're either killed, stoned, whatever. They come to bring progress and an ever-advancing civilization. So sorry for the diatribe. My point is that you can't convince people who are indoctrinated anything, because they're so sure about that. It's not, indoctrination doesn't rely on reason. It relies on a methodology of training people to and actually encaging them in an invisible cage. And our job as human beings is to love people, to understand people, and to walk a mile with them. Not
empathy.
Yes, because you can give them all the doctrine. You can say, well, Jesus said this, or Baha'u'llah said that. To an indoctrinated person, that is not going to do anything. But if you are sincere and a human being and a living, humanized human being, you can begin to build trust with each other and build relationships that invite conversation and invite sharing. It is not a pragmatic assault on the boundaries of people's invisible cages. My point. Thank you.
And just one real thing, we're going to move to the next slide, but one real thing, and it's a beautiful thing that Sharon asked that question about how some people learn and some don't. That last sentence, Jeremiah, if you can read that off, maybe, or anyone, the last sentence from the last, yeah, the last sentence. Can someone read that? Blessed. It's a very good answer to our questions they were asking. How come people don't know, or how do some people get blessed and they know, or whatever? I
I'll
see
go ahead.
unmuted people. Yeah.
Blessed are those who receive the light of divine bounties from those luminous day springs.
And a quick reminder, bounties are gifts. We don't deserve them. We get them. And if we get them, we got them. We don't know why. Only God knows. So this quote, if we can have a beautiful volunteer, handsome volunteer, anybody volunteer?
We cherish the hope that the loved ones of God, like unto an attractive force, will draw these bounties from their very source and arise with such a radiance and exert such an influence as to become the perspicuous signs of the Son of Truth. You
So we use
know
the word
that
perspicuous. Sorry, before you read that real quick, I want to ask a question. Does anyone know what perspicuous means? I'm pulling up a dictionary because I cannot define it right now, but we used it twice this session today. Perspicuous. Perspicuous.
Very
Okay.
clear, easily understood.
Okay. Yes. Someone may use in a synonym lucid. Okay. Can you read the rest of that, please? The other verse.
you will know them by their fruit, and it's in chapter Matthew, chapter 7, verse 16.
Okay. So we got a definition of perspicuous, something that's easily understood, something lucid. And we also have this beautiful metaphor of every human being like a grapevine, and the fruit that we bear being our actions, and what we produce being clearly obvious and apparent. So going to this quote about this this beautiful concept of bounty, I want to ask a question, because we were just earlier, the last slide, talking about a concept. How do we recognize the manifestation of God from the whole world? The people who do recognize them, how does that, how do we choose, or rather, how do people get chosen to get in contact with this message and accept it? How does this happen where some people can accept it and many don't? So on and so forth. So here we are, we're seeing a very beautiful, pithy answer. In addition to that last sentence in the last slide, once more, we cherish the hope that the loved ones of God, like unto an attractive force, will draw these bounties from their very source and arise with such radiance and exert such influence as to become the perspicuous signs of the Son of Truth. So, the loved ones of God, who are they? That's a good question. I'm not sure everyone here or anyone here can judge exactly who the loved ones are, but we can ascertain what attributes loved ones have. Those who love God, who, as were mentioned by several people, expressed purity of heart. They are trying to, again, establish these attributes of God little by little in their lives, showing these attributes of God little by little in their lives, doing their utmost to try to reflect more and more every day. And in growing this relationship with God, again, growing that love, they're that loved one of God. But again, it's nothing that I can say for myself, or I can say for anyone else, or anyone really can say about anyone else. It's it's a mystery that you hope to make a reality, but ultimately speaking, as was shown in the very quote below, we're going to know by the evidences of the fruit that is born by the actions and what actually happens, right? So it's an empirical process that you can know this idea of God's love in reality. So here we say, like into an attractive force, again, these loved ones of God will draw these bounties from their very source and arise with such radiance and exert such influence as to become the perspicuous signs of the Sun of Truth. So there's this concept about Baha'is being known when they go to a different village or a different city, to be known by those who see them that they are indeed a Baha'i because of how they carry themselves, how they act, and who they are, as opposed to the society around them. So, for better or for worse, the society may not be so nice to live in. Unfortunately, we have a lot of movies showing dystopic environments, and some places are dystopic as we consider them around the world today. That being the case, Baha'is are called upon, as is anyone who is wishing to become a lover of God in any era of religious history. We are called upon to draw upon these bounties that God has provided us. And what's even more potent today, it is actually these bounties. And I know I posited a mystery in the beginning, but we're also in an age where we have access to information. Anyone alive today can find information far easier than anyone alive 100 years ago or even 20 years ago. And be it that we have to travel some ways to find an electronic means of communication, be it that we have to simply open up our phones that are in our pockets. The verities that are found in the world around us are very easy to be accessed. And to many people, I would I make fun of this, so I make fun of it in myself as well. I may use my technology that I have accessible to me so easily for my entertainment rather than my learning. So I remember growing up with some people watching a lot of cat videos, silly videos of pets doing silly things. Of course, entertainment isn't per se bad, and that's not at all what I mean that we shouldn't entertain ourselves whatsoever. That's not it. I simply mean that we have at our fingertips the means, as we do to make others happy, be it through entertainment and laughter. We have the means to use this technology available to us to discover the Word of God, to discover the world that God has created for us, to discover the laws of nature, to learn anything and everything that is currently available on the internet. To visit libraries, again, it was a very, very valuable means for a whole century. Many people gained access to books that for a millennia was thought impossible. So access to books, still a thing. You can open up a book in your local library, of course. My intent in speaking at this point, I feel we need to start asking a question. But my point, having said all this, is that these bounties that we're drawing upon and the availability that it is that we have a chance of increasing access to these bounties is very high, simply because we have access to tools, to resources, to energy. We're talking energy to travel, use a vehicle to travel wherever you want. We have access to tools that were thought impossible, and we have them now. The means are at our disposal to do something. So unlike the people a millennia ago or 2 millennia ago who were peasants, who were owned by a feudal lord, who knew nothing beyond their pastures, we are in an age where we can do what we think must be done or should be done. So having said that, I want to ask everyone here what these bounties are that we're drawing upon from their very source. Before we talk about arising with such radiance to exert our influence, exert influence from this source, maybe I'm giving it away. What is it that we're doing? How do we draw from these bounties from their very source?
John, can I just do something here? This we cherish the hope that the loved ones of God, like unto an attractive force, will draw these bounties from the very source and arise with such radiance and exert such influence as to become the perspicuous signs of the Son of Truth. Ye shall know them by their fruits. I will put this supposition to both the lesser and the greater plan of God. The Baha'i community is a pattern. It is a pattern of moral, a rectitude of conduct, a chaste and holy life, and absolute freedom from all prejudice. Therefore, it is an observable reality. However, all that you've just mentioned is set within this condition of materialism, which is the disease across the board that this new pattern of life is going to shine its light as a refuge for the whole of humanity. And the point about cancerous materialism, there are two things here. This quote speaks very clearly to the light as opposed to the darkness, and about the disease of which the Western world, you know, that's all of us, are consumed by cancerous materialism. And this light, this force for good, is going to mirror the pattern of life, both from the individual, the families, the community, the society, the institutions, to be able to show its fruit, which is this evolving civilization. And it does start with the individual. And I would just like to, I didn't want to harm anybody today, but, you know, truth telling is a necessity. If you're going to have quotes that say, you will know them by their fruit, you know, the fruit is a divine civilization. The fruit is, the nucleus of that is the Baha'i community for this day. It's going to show that. And the greater plan of God is already actively rearranging society around us, and we should be very aware of that. And I have from the Citadel of Faith, because I've just attended one of the most revolutionary firesides I've ever attended on materialism, a civilization diagnosis. And so this quote sits within that. And I would refer people to Citadel of Faith, America Passing Through a Crisis. And it's pertinent, it's happening, it's timeless, and it's happening now. And I would be remiss not to approach this. And why I am approaching the fruit. The fruit is the nucleus and pattern of a new way, a new life, and the hope in a critical situation in the evolution of humanity, a coming of maturity, because we have no choice, is my point. Thank you so much for your ears.
Okay, I just want to say one thing. Sorry, John.
No, please don't be sorry. So just an aside, we're all here. We don't need to say sorry to each other. We're here to discuss. But I appreciate your intention. Please.
Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, we all, and I'm assuming that Baha'is are, as a guardian, and asked us to be aware of current efforts, right? Current events. China, Russia, India, all of Africa, Venezuela and Belgium just announced a new world order. They had a big standing 20 countries on stage, right? The new world order just launched officially. And here we're sitting as Baha'is looking at that, and we're saying, wait, what's the difference between Baha'u'llah's new world order and their world order? Now, that is something that is very much a burning issue right now that we should be reading. I just, in our archives, we just picked up a 1931 booklet brought out in 31, remember, just before World War I. And it's called The New World Order by Shoghi Effendi. I read through that. I mean, this is something that right today, if you're not familiar with their world order and our world order, which of course is of a spiritual nature, but it's not enough to say that. We got students every day. We got literally hundreds of students coming through the museum, and they talk about that new New World Order all the time. And then as a Baha'i, if I'm not familiar with the difference, boy, you're going to missing a big fruit and a big conversation.
So I wanted to ask for tangible reasons. We, unfortunately, in society, tend to think about big ideas, about stuff happening somewhere else, about big concepts, but not really knowing how to see it in our own families or in our own personal daily life. This is not a criticism at all of what was just said. I'm going to be clear. My intention is for someone who's watching, for someone who's learning with us, to connect with what's in our heads, these concepts, in a way that someone hasn't seen it before can grasp at least something to start with, some breadcrumbs to start the trail, so to speak, to the bigger ideas.
Okay.
So please, if I could have that, yes.
I would just okay, so I just want to thank Sabine because there are two things going on here. People who are not I'm going to answer what you're saying because it starts with families. At the moment, there's a big focus in terms of families connecting with each other and sharing spiritual education like children's classes, junior youth, and coming together as communities because there's been since the especially in America and other countries, a big disconnect in terms of neighborhoods. So, you know, there are a lot of ways that neighborhoods can link and a lot of I can, you know, Christian, my churches around here are doing similar things too with youth and children and families and starting to just come together and start to have meaningful conversations. And so it starts with the family, with inside the family and in their neighborhood and in their community on one level. And the big picture stuff is really just that we shouldn't be so the reason why I think it's been brought up today, John, sorry to do this to you, but you know, while we are very focused on our inward looking, everywhere, you know, in these quotations, it says that the creation of God, well, everything, and even nature, is the big picture. But if you just want to look at the family, and that is the primary start, the individual is key to this, and then their families and then their community, their neighborhoods and their communities. So what kind of things can neighborhoods and communities have, activities to bring them together, to start to look at the well-being and to begin to consult around how to make sure that they've got safe communities, communities that, you know, have access to food. And so you can start off with a microcosm, but you can't dismiss the macrocosm, as was mentioned as well. But for people just joining this, I mean, they should, if in their neighborhood they can see that there are children's classes running or junior youth, or there are community activities that don't include that. They could be, I think you've had a recent event in Florida, I think it was to do with children, but you know, just gatherings and beginning to a dialogue and getting to know each other and have discussions around well-being and these things. Now that's my contribution. I don't know if that is generic to what you're trying to share with people who don't who have not come in contact with the Baha'i faith. So I hope that helps somewhat.
Well, these are some thoughts. These are some thoughts to consider. I would add as well, which is again mentioning this materialism that we're all facing. Just sticking to the some real life examples that I can connect with just offhand. For all of us here that we're on Zoom, or all of us that are watching on YouTube or Facebook, I'm fairly certain that every person watching this session has an electronic device or access to it in order to be able to hear what we're saying. So thinking of what we're doing now, we're using an electronic device to learn from each other, to learn from minds that are on the Zoom, but also hopefully these quotes that we're pulling from the sources of these quotes from Some Answered Questions of Abdul Baha or from the Bible as we see in bold below. So my hope is that we, in addition to wishing to be outreaching to others to make a positive effect on others' lives, unfortunately, if you don't have hope, you're not going to give anyone any hope. If you are not someone who has love in your heart, you're not going to give any love to anybody. So I think it's extremely important if you want to see a better world that we, in addition to wanting to serve others, try to find that in our own lives instead of looking to our national government for something that they cannot govern our hearts. They cannot govern what we do in our personal lives. We only are really the ones who are doing what we do in our personal lives. Instead of looking to all these overseas actors that are doing something, looking at what is in our neighborhood, looking at our family. Again, there's a mention of children's classes, junior youth, and so on. And perhaps there's a group available. You can engage with them. My take here is simply starting with this beautiful quote here and what we're being guided to do. This idea of trying to increase that love, that relationship with God, so that as this quote speaks to, that this attractive force which grows can also help us to, again, draw these bounties from the source, which is God, our God, the manifestation of God for this age, giving us all these bounties right now to be that to be that vehicle for the exertion of this influence on ourselves and others. So there is no dichotomy. There is no separation between our inner lives and our outer lives. There is no separation between what I'm thinking about doing tomorrow and what I will do tomorrow. Ultimately speaking, what I will do tomorrow is a product of some thoughts from some time that I engage and think to do it, and I actually do it. So let's think about the time that we're not in society, when we're at home, when we're taking moments to ourselves, spending a moment to read these writings every single morning and evening. Let's take a moment to reflect on them, to see how we can implement them in our lives. And then maybe setting a goal of at least putting one new action in place so that maybe if it just is smiling at your neighbor tomorrow and you haven't done it today or yesterday or ever before, maybe that's your next goal is to smile at your neighbor. So that being said, I know there's a lot of thoughts that a lot of people can have about how they want to improve their lives and the lives of their neighbors. We've heard quite a bit from the various people here, myself included. I'd like to know what you think. Anyone who hasn't spoken today, please, you're very welcome to speak up. In addition to that, Jeremiah, if you could switch the slide. So we got Arya, we got D, Hushang, Jiva, Kamran, or is it Kambiz? I don't know. Kamwa.
John, the slides are gonna move into like a different kind of topic
All right, then
that
let's just put
would
it there for
probably,
what we're going to
yeah.
see. Let's put it
I
there for
mean,
what we're going to see next week. So we know what we're going to look forward to. Forward-looking view. So the immortality of the spirit. That's what we'll be talking about next week. So on Monday next week at 8 p.m., we welcome everyone who's here to join us once more for this roadmap for a moral society. We spoke today about the reality of the manifestation of God, the reality of man, this mirror of God, what we reflect versus the manifestation of God, what He reflects. Um, we spoke to these bounties that are bestowed upon us. There is so much on this topic of bounties. It's not doing it any justice. Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha speak very, very, very much on this. For Baha'i teachers, what bounties befall you. For people who arise to serve the cause, what bounties befall you. A lot of bounty. And just starting on your first step to create that connection with God, the bounty that befalls you, a lot of that. So, with that being said, the immortality of the spirit is what we discuss next week. We're going to again do it on Monday at 8 p.m. every Monday. we are going to close today, if there are no further comments with or questions or ideas or thoughts, we're going to close with a closing prayer. And we do not have a volunteer. Oh, Katya, hello.
Hi,
Are
can
you?
you hear me?
We can.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm first time here, and I found your site through the Martha Ruth talks. And
Oh, lovely.
I live in Canada, and in my community, there's nothing like this, and I feel so blessed. So I just wanted to thank you all for doing this.
Well, you're very welcome. This is a product of all the beautiful people that are here who contribute. This is um, our presentation maker, Mr. Hakim. He's not here today, but uh, these PowerPoints are really a product of love and Jeremiah coming in and making it even more beautiful. All the people making it possible technically, and of course, in the sense of compilation of all these writings. So it's a product of love, and hopefully you can continue sharing that love every week you join.
I keep sending your website to everybody I know. I'm disabled and can't see very much, but this kind of thing keeps me seeing. Keeps my spiritual eye alive. And I think you don't know how many people you affect. It's not just people here, but my conversation is changing by visiting Clearwater Behind. And because I'm disabled, it's even more valuable to me, or maybe it would be just as valuable, but I have time to sit here and be so gifted. So thank you.
Well, we talk about those bounties, right? This was a gift today to hear you speak and share your beautiful words, your very kind words. So this is a bounty which has befallen us today. Thank you for sharing your beautiful, beautiful, kind words, and God bless you.
All of
you
you
know,
too.
So, if I may, I don't mean to put you or anyone here on the spot. Uh, we are going to ask for a closing prayer. If anyone is moved to share a closing prayer, those prayers are so valuable to us because of the spiritual energies that your joyful, your pure heart exudes when you pray because you want to.
John, can we say a prayer for the people in Jamaica, which are getting hit by Hurricane Hurricane Melissa?
Yes, it's very, very, very unfortunate, very sad. Yes. So if anyone wishes to volunteer, is that also a request to volunteer?
Sure, I can say a prayer.
Please.
Praise be to thee, O Lord my God. Thou seest and knowest that I have called upon thy servants to turn nowhere except in the direction of thy best of homes, and have bidden them observe not save the things thou didst prescribe in thy perspicuous book, the book which hath been sent down according to thine inscrutable decree and irrevocable purpose. I can utter no word, O my God, unless I be permitted by thee, and can move in no direction until I obtain thy sanction. It is thou, O my God, who has called me into being through the power of thy mind, and has endowed me with thy grace to manifest thy cause. Wherefore I have been subjected to such adversities, that my tongue hath been hindered from extolling thee, and from magnifying thy glory. Oh, praise be to thee, O my God, for the things thou didst ordain for me through thy decree, and by the power of thy sovereignty. I beseech thee that thou wilt fortify both myself and them that love me in our love for thee, and wilt keep us firm in thy cause. I swear by thy might, O my God, thy servant's shame is to be shut out as by a veil from thee, and his glory is to know thee. Armed with the power of thy name, nothing can ever hurt me, and with thy love in my heart, all the world's afflictions can in no wise alarm me. Send down then, therefore, O my Lord, upon me and upon my loved ones, that which will protect us from the mischief of those that are repudiated thy truth, and disbelieved in thy signs. Thou art verily the glorious, the most bountiful.
We wish everyone in Jamaica, as they are going through that hurricane, as much safety and and blessings as they can go through in this very tumultuous time while this hurricane passes through Jamaica and the neighboring Caribbean islands. We hope you all have a very fruitful week ahead, and we look forward to seeing